part of why I decided to become a coach was because I loved coaching my direct reports. Like that's what I loved. I remember one time I had a performance review and my boss was like, you spend too much time in relationship with other people. And I'm like, but that's who I am. Like that's what brings me joy. That's my zone of genius. That's what lights me on fire and lights me up. And so now I'm in a space that honors that and gives me that opportunity to really do that. And so, yeah, if I'm being totally honest, I think fear held me back for a lot of years. Fear of what other people would think and fear of turning away from everything that I've ever known. And like I said, kind of the salary and the title and all of that, and really focusing on the intrinsic rewards of what I'm doing and the work that I'm doing. It goes back again to what you said about being honest with yourself. And like, just so many times that's hard for us to just really admit what we want and who we want to become and what we need in order to be or feel successful or whatever. And so many times we don't want to admit those things. And that's part of self-care too, is just like articulating what we need and creating the boundaries so that we can become the person that we're designed to be.
This is the Energy Within podcast, all about accessing, nurturing, and building your energy and your confidence so that you can design your life the way you want. My name is Carrie Jokala. I am your host. I am a Reiki practitioner, a fitness instructor, a wife, a mom to 2 little boys, and today I am talking with Marisa Ciesluk. She is a leadership and executive coach, which, don't get fooled by that title. We have a really awesome conversation today. Sometimes for me, I don't know how you feel, but when I hear, maybe I should have told Marisa this before I did my intro, but sometimes the words like leadership and executive coach, it can seem to me like very rigid and it's got to be all super professional. But what we really talk about today is navigating burnout, listening to what your soul is calling out for you to do. Reaching your higher potential, I think, is the best way to put it. If you know that there's more for your life, that you're called to do more, you're here for a bigger purpose. First of all, spoiler alert, you are. Second of all, if you're listening to this, you already know that you're called for more. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation. I think we hit on a lot of great points. Marisa has a wonderful story and a great message, and I can't wait for you to hear it. So here we go. Marisa, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm so excited to talk about your story.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. I'm glad to be here and glad to be with you and share a little bit about my story.
Yeah. So why don't you start by letting us know who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I am a leadership and executive coach, and I work primarily with women who are in leadership positions who are navigating burnout, whether they are kind of on the brink of it or in the middle of it or navigating what comes after being burned out. And so I do that through coaching. I do that through what I call leadership learning labs, which are opportunities for people to come together and learn and grow as leaders, and as well as speaking opportunities. So I love what I do. It's definitely personal to me, which you'll hear a little bit as I share some of my story. But burnout is definitely something that is something that's really on my heart.
I can tell you I've experienced that. So that resonates very much with me.
Yes.
I've gone through different periods over different times in my life where I realized I was either overdoing something or just in a position that wasn't fulfilling. And so like I just felt my energy being drained, like I wasn't able to live up to my potential. And it makes a difference. Like, I don't think we're here to just go to work and retire and die. You know, like there's more to life. There's more to why we're here.
Exactly. I 100% agree.
So what I liked about what you shared initially with me about your story was that scary transition from realizing that you were in a space that wasn't fulfilling for you the way that you thought it would be. And you made that leap. So why don't you start off, just start at the beginning. Where were you? What happened? You know, and how did you get to where you are today?
So I spent about 20 years in higher education and kind of got to the point of my career where I was at the peak of my career. And for probably about 10 years of that 20 years, if I'm being fully honest, I had this kind of gnawing inside of me, this craving inside of me for something more. I felt like I was being called for something more and really didn't pay attention. I kind of kept pushing that little voice inside of me down and like, no, I can't do this. I'm doing this thing in higher education. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And really not paying attention to the cues that were inside of me. And in 2016, I got a promotion and I thought it was what I wanted. I thought it was exactly what I wanted to do. I had been kind of looking for an opportunity to grow professionally and personally. Simultaneously, we found out we were expecting our very first child. And of course, as that happens, and I had my daughter and I was dropping her off at daycare and I was absolutely miserable. And I was literally crying all the way to work. I'm going to get teary-eyed just thinking about it right now because it was that space of just being fully burned out and tired, being a new mom. So I was in a new position at home and trying to figure all of that out and then trying to figure out this new position at work. And this voice inside of me just kept getting louder and louder and louder. And finally, I had this day where it was just like, would I want this for my daughter? Would I want this for her as she grows up inside of her, telling her to do something different or to do something that she really felt passionate about and called to do? Would I want that for her? And so as scary as it was, I finally realized that that is not what I wanted for her. And she's really my why for me, really finding that voice inside of me. And so I started planting the seeds with my boss. I thought I was absolutely crazy because I was like, I've reached the peak of my career. I've got the title, I've got the salary, and here we go. And right before I turned in my letter of resignation, I was like, oh my gosh, what in the world am I doing? Like this crazy. And I did. And I walked away 2 weeks later. Actually, it'll be a year next Monday.
Oh, wow.
I know, which is kind of crazy. Or 2 years, I'm sorry, 2 years next Monday. And yeah, and it even on my hardest days, even in my hardest days in this space, I am at peace and I know that I made the right decision.
That is so cool to hear and so important that, yeah, it's not always about the money or the title or, what people think is going to fulfill them. And if that does, then great. But if that's not, and you're feeling that call, like, I feel like it's so important to acknowledge it. What I wanted to ask, and if this is too prying, you can let me know, but
Nope, go ahead. I'm an open book, fully transparent.
Was that really just the main reason that you ignored the call for so long when you said you felt it for like 10 years? And I'm just curious if there was more to why you weren't giving more credence to it.
I think I was afraid. I think I was afraid of what other people would think. I think I was afraid of, oh my gosh, like, what does this mean if I leave everything that I've ever known, the career path that I thought I wanted 20 years ago? What does that say about me? What does that mean about me? So I was making that more about what does this mean about me? But really what it meant was I was being true to that internal voice that was screaming at me at that point, saying, it's time, it's time. But I wasn't in a place that was really truly valuing the strengths that I brought to my table. And so I did kind of feel dead inside. And I was putting on this facade every day to go to work. And I was craving some authenticity. Like I was just like, I want to show up and be my true self. And that part of why I decided to become a coach was because I loved coaching my direct reports. Like that's what I loved. I remember one time I had a performance review and my boss was like, you spend too much time in relationship with other people. And I'm like, but that's who I am. Like that's what brings me joy. That's my zone of genius. That's what lights me on fire and lights me up. And so now I'm in a space that honors that and gives me that opportunity to really do that. And so, yeah, if I'm being totally honest, I think fear held me back for a lot of years. Fear of what other people would think and fear of turning away from everything that I've ever known.
Yeah.
And like I said, kind of the salary and the title and all of that, and really focusing on the intrinsic rewards of what I'm doing and the work that I'm doing.
So did you put any pieces in place, like any building blocks in place prior to leaving? Or did you just kind of say, this is it, and then I'm going to figure it out later?
It was kind of a combination of both.
Okay.
I always tell people don't necessarily do what I did because sometimes I can be a little irrational. You know, my husband and I sat down and had a conversation. I started kind of planting the seeds with my boss, probably like in November or December, just saying, you know, I'm not sure that this is the right position for me. I'm feeling really burned out. I'm really exhausted. And then, you know, my husband and I sat down and really had a heart-to-heart conversation about, can we make this happen financially? We are a dual income household. And looking at, you know, what does that mean if we release the salary and release this financial and, you know, deposit that we put into our bank account every month? Can we live without that? And, you know, we sat down and had some really eye-opening conversations about what that was going to look like, and also not knowing like what I was going to do next. So some people are really like, I've got to have a perfect plan in place. And I was like, I'm not really sure what it is, but I know that I need the space and the time to kind of heal and sit in the quiet and have some time for reflection. So yeah, we put some building blocks in place. We made sure that we were safe. And then I walked in February and handed in my letter of resignation and 2 weeks later walked out. So, you know, some people are like, why didn't you give more time? And to be honest, Carrie, I was so tired.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just physically, mentally, emotionally done. Like I had nothing left to give myself. I had nothing left to give my family, my friends, the people that I cared about, not to mention I had nothing left to give at work. And so it was time. It was time.
You brought up a thought that I suppose I never actually really thought before, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and it might be time to say it, that self-care, people talk about self-care all the time, and, you know, what do you do in your free time to take care of you? Sometimes self-care, I think, involves looking at your career and how that's affecting you and the rest of your life. Because if that's
Absolutely
draining you, I don't think any amount of other self-care is going to help, because you're going to go back into that environment and feel those same feelings. And, you know, that work can only carry over so far if you feel stuck somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's funny. I work with a mental health therapist, and I was talking with her this morning, and I've had some kind of major breakthroughs. And I was telling her this morning, I was like, I don't know that I would have had the mental or emotional capacity to have these breakthroughs if I had been in my current work environment or had been in my previous work environment. Mm-hmm. I think I've released that energy and released that space to kind of create the space to be able to have those breakthroughs. Yeah. And so I needed to kind of let go of all of that, because it was totally draining my energy. Like I had nothing. Like, and I mean, I know that sounds really drastic, but it's like I was absolutely dead inside, and not really wanting to get up in the morning. And it wasn't just dread. It was just like, like I can't do this. And like I said, I was crying all the way to work. And that's no way to live. That's just really not the way to live.
Yeah, I think at a previous job that I was at, where I felt that soul sucking going on after I had my first son, I was not at all ready to go back to work after maternity leave. And I think I cried for a week straight, starting with the couple days prior to returning to work. Yeah. And it tapered a little bit, but not a lot. I think at least the first month I was crying like every day on the way to work. And it was a long drive to work, and I was still crying when I pulled in the parking lot. I'm like, this isn't right. My day is not structured the way that I want. I'm not doing something that fulfills me, that I want to do for the rest of my life. It's not even supporting me the way that I need to be supported in all ways.
Yeah.
You know, financially, emotionally, or otherwise. You know, like you have to be honest with, I think, where you're at and what you're feeling and what you need. And I don't think people should be flighty about it and be like, well, I just don't like working here, so I'm going to, like, if it's actually like a soul level thing that you can feel, you need to acknowledge that. And I think too many times a lot of people, and I've been in this place before, feeling like you're stuck, like you don't have a choice. And I always believe that no matter how hard or how scary it is, or how long it might take to make a transition, I feel like we do always have a choice. You always have a choice, you know? So it's important to tune into that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And getting curious, like just being aware of the choices that you have and then getting curious about like, why do you want to make those choices? And why might there be a better choice for you? Yeah. And I love what you said about being honest with yourself. Like if I was being totally honest with myself, like I said, that voice had been there for a really long time and it just kept getting louder. And it got to the point where I could no longer ignore it. And I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to do something about it.
I know you mentioned before that you felt, or that you even now you feel more at peace, even on your worst days. As far as an energy change from feeling that burnout in that previous job, did you notice a change right away in your energy and how you were feeling, or did it take a while? Were you still consumed by a lot of fear, or was there that weight lifted off of your shoulders? Like, what were you feeling when you first left?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's so interesting. My husband, in his infinite wisdom, said to me before I left, he's like, before I resigned from my job, he's like, I want you to take a month and I just want you to do nothing. I just want you to take care of yourself.
Wow.
Now, and I know. So he's my biggest cheerleader and my biggest supporter. But I think, and that, to be honest, if I'm being honest, that month turned into a little longer than a month. But I needed that time to just sit and be quiet and be still. And like I said, like, I don't feel like I felt like there were so many things I had to process that I just didn't have the mental and emotional and physical capacity to process while I was in that environment that was completely sucking my soul out of me, sucking all of my energy out of me. So yeah, that first 6 weeks or so was just, it was definitely a shift in my energy in a very positive way. And I just was able to really hear myself think. And I had a lot more interest in doing things. Like I had a lot more energy to do things. I did a lot of walking, a lot of spending time outside, and just really paying attention to what my heart and my mind were telling me so that I could really kind of navigate and figure out what was my next step.
Yeah.
What was my next step?
I feel like when we release those things that are so heavy on us and heavy on our soul, that our vibration literally can finally start to raise because we're not being dragged down. So again, kind of almost going back to that self-care thing, like no matter how much work we do to try to raise our vibration, if we've got something that's weighing us down that much, it's going to be such a fight, and it's just not going to help us get to the level or to have those breakthroughs, like you were saying, if we're being dragged down. And like, I just remember in that same environment, I worked in that environment 2 times. Nothing against, if anyone's listening, nothing against the individual people who worked there. It's just, the situation and what I was doing. It's just, it's not what I'm called to do, Yeah. And there were a lot of aspects of it that just weren't for me. And I would try so hard. I'm like, okay, maybe it's just my mindset. I just got to get in the right headspace, so I'd listen to personal developments in the car on the way to work. I'd try meditation. I always already worked out, but, I'd try to be more committed and mindful about that as well, and doing all the things. And the moment I opened that door, it was like, whoosh, it's all back. Doesn't matter. Everything I just did, it's not coming inside with me.
Yeah. I think that's so true. And it goes back again to what you said about being honest with yourself. And like, just so many times that's hard for us to just really admit what we want and who we want to become and what we need in order to be or feel successful or whatever. And so many times we don't want to admit those things. And that's part of self-care too. It's just like articulating what we need and creating the boundaries so that we can become the person that we're designed to be.
Yeah. So the people who come to you, do they already know that they're experiencing burnout? Do they feel like, are they coming to you because they want to make a transition? Like what's the starting point for the people that you tend to work with?
It varies. A lot of my clients right now are making career changes. Some are staying within their same organization. Some are leveling up in their current organization. So they're moving into a new position and they're just trying to figure all of that out. And they're just inundated with all of this stuff and just trying to find the space. And that's what I create for them, is I create this intentional safe space for them to just kind of navigate all of what I call kind of the mental clutter, the noise in their head. That's from, prioritizing or making decisions or setting boundaries so that they can be really successful in their position. Some of my clients come to me and they're like, I have no idea what I need and what I want. And so we start talking about what do you want? What do you need? And really helping, I help a lot of my clients really connect to that why. Like I said earlier, my daughter is my why. Like I never want her to feel like she is stuck in a position or she's afraid to leave something that is not up, or that is, if something is totally stealing her joy, I want her to know she can leave. She doesn't have to stay in that situation. So some of my clients are doing that. But yeah, I mean, some of them are just at that general crossroads or just feeling like very frazzled and just need somebody to kind of help them navigate all of that and figure out what the next step is.
So I know we just kind of mentioned about how people come in kind of at different levels, different places in what they're feeling and experiencing. But do you have a typical, like a general starting point for someone if they're like, I'm burned out, I know I want something else, but I don't know what to do? Like, what do you recommend people generally start looking at first?
The first thing is I typically have them kind of connect to themselves, connect to what do they want? Who are they? Connect to their why, like trying to figure out really what drives them, what motivates them, not necessarily externally, but internally, because a lot of times we've got to figure out what's the intrinsic motivator. And then kind of really clarifying all of that information, like who it is that they are and who they want, and creating that vision for them to move forward. Then we work together to kind of build their courage muscles. And so that's, a lot of confidence building, because a lot of times when you're in a burnout environment, and I know this is true for me and it's true for a lot of my clients, they come and I'm working with brilliant people, they're leaders in major companies and things like that. And a lot of times they come and their self-esteem has been completely destroyed. They've all of this self-doubt that is showing up. And so we start by, again, creating space for them to take some what I call messy action or imperfect action. And so building those courage muscles, recognizing that failure is just data. It is not, it's just a learning opportunity, and it gives us data to help us make the next step. And then I work with them also to help them find their voice, communicate what they need, help them use their voice to advocate both for themselves and for other people. And then ultimately make that change, whatever that needs to be, whether it's a change in the behavior at work, or a change in their mindset, or in their overall situation, their workplace environment, whatever that may be. So it just depends. People come in various places. Yeah.
A message that I kind of want to drive home along with this is just reinforcing the idea that everybody has this option. There's room for everybody to live out their soul's purpose and their calling, just because there's other people already doing whatever it is you might want to do, or it's something that people might typically say like, oh, you can't make a living doing that. Well, yes, you can. Like, no, obviously there's got to be a healthy dose of realism in certain things as well. But I mean, there's a woman,
yes,
I don't
absolutely
know her personally, but I've heard about her through other coaching programs that I've done. She makes 6 figures teaching people how to doodle. I mean, you can do anything, literally anything, as long as you've got the tools and the confidence and the drive to do it. We just got to go back within and find that again, because we all have it. We've just maybe buried it down or forgotten it, or we don't know how to listen to ourselves anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I work with a lot of high achievers and a lot of high performers. And so I will say, and I'm one of those too. I'm kind of, I call myself a recovering perfectionist, but oftentimes we're failure fragile. We're afraid to fail, and we're afraid to take those leaps that might put us into these experiences that we don't know. And so, taking that risk, I call it purposeful risk taking. So when you align a risk with your values and who you want to become, it has a greater purpose. And so when it's connected in that way, risk taking, because a lot of my clients are risk averse, which I get. It's scary. I mean, it was scary taking a leap, but when you align it with who you are and who you want to become and the values that you hold dear to your heart, then the risk is a less, or at least it feels a little bit less.
I've been getting the message multiple times in probably the last year that if you leap, as long as you're in alignment, I would imagine, but if you leap, the universe is going to catch you. Like things are going to open up to you that weren't going to show up as long as you were staying in this other space. So that's why you couldn't see them. So maybe, that fear is still living there because you can't see. But if you go ahead and you take that leap into alignment with your path and what you really want, it's all going to show up. You're going to attract so much more to you because you're at peace. You're living in alignment. You've got that weight lifting off your shoulders. Your vibration is rising. All those things that we've been talking about. You got to leap.
Yeah. 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 I mean, our brains are wired to keep us safe. So anytime we go out of that safety zone, our brains are like, danger, danger, danger. And we want our brains to keep us safe when we're, standing on the edge of a mountain and getting ready to fall off. We want our brains. But sometimes our brains are like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. And they're craving that certainty. And so I'll often work with clients and I'm like, okay, give me evidence that you can do this. What have you done before that maybe not this exact situation, but what's similar? Like I was working with a client this morning and she's building her business. She's taking her business to the next level. And she's like, I don't know how to do this. And I'm like, you do know how to do it. You've got a successful business right now. You're just taking that business to a whole new level. And your brain's like, I don't know how to do this. You do know how to do it. We've got lots of evidence because you've already got a successful business. So yeah, our brains, I mean, we want them to keep us safe, but sometimes we got to tell them to be quiet. Shut up.
Yeah. Like there's no more saber-toothed tiger out there. Like it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can stop reacting the same way.
Yes.
Simmer down.
Exactly.
I feel like this conversation was exactly what I needed because it keeps bringing up a lot of points that I've needed.
Yeah.
So I want to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. What hit home for you?
Just reinforcing taking that leap and being true to yourself, living in alignment, all that stuff. Like I feel like I'm more on that path than I ever have been.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's more in front of me yet. So I'm personally working on consistency and being authentic and finding that peaceful path where I know that I'm doing what I'm meant to do.
Yeah.
And I can tell what makes me happy, what lights me up, where I seem to be the most gifted at helping people. Like those are the things that I want to focus even more on going forward because life feels so much better and things feel so much lighter. There's more joy when you're living in alignment.
Absolutely. I will say it's funny because before now, like people would always say like, be your authentic self and you got to live in alignment, be more intentional. And I'm like, whatever, like that's a bunch of BS. And now that I'm in it, I'm like, oh, wow. Like this is good stuff. And this is a good place to be. And I really like it. And I want to stay in this space. And I also think it takes a lot of hard work. And I think a lot of times people shy away from doing the hard work. And that's what I tell clients when I onboard them. I'm like, look, this is hard. This is not going to be, come to a session once a week and we're going to, have these great and easy conversations. Like this is hard work and you've got to take action and you've got to work through some of those fears. And that's what we're here to do. And so I think a lot of people shy away from that, but it's a good place. It's a good space.
Yeah. Like you were saying, taking messy action, like that's something I've been working on getting better at doing because I'm a Virgo, so I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah. You're in good company.
Yeah. And just being okay with playing the long game.
Yeah.
Knowing that things aren't going to happen overnight. Because with a lot of things in life, with, whether it's changing what you're going to do or going on a diet or sticking with exercise, anything in life, people might stick with it for a week and they're like, well, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Or I stuck with it for a whole month and nothing happened. Well, maybe something was in the works that you didn't see or you didn't know about And if you would have kept going, you know, like you got to keep going. If it's something that you know you're aligned with and you really want it,
Yeah.
you got to keep going. Even when you make a social media post and you only get 2 likes,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that it didn't resonate with somebody who saw it and didn't double tap on it. You know,
Yeah.
they might be coming back and they might be watching what you're doing without raising their hand, but one day they're going to need you. And if you don't stay consistent, where'd you go? You can't help that person anymore.
Yeah.
You know, they're on to the next. And you might have been, I don't want to get all like woo woo and weird, but
Yeah.
I do feel like you might have been the exact right person for that person, but you gave up because you only had 2 likes on one of your posts. So you stopped posting.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
just as an example, you know, and then that's what I keep trying to work on too. Cause my stuff, if we're talking about like the business end of things, like stuff fluctuates. Like
Yeah.
I'll have something that does really well. And my next post, I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And it's like crickets. It's like, this is good stuff. Where are you guys?
Yeah. I tell this all the time. I think part of it is we treat success like a destination. And that's why I always tell people, like, I got to the peak of my career and then I quit. And like, that's kind of like, people are like, what in the world? But I'm like, that wasn't what I wanted. And several years ago, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. And when you start the journey, you're not guaranteed to reach the summit because of altitude sickness and a variety of other things. So you start that journey knowing that you may never reach the summit. You hope and you try and you keep taking one step every day, but you don't know if you're going to hit it. And I think that's what really helped me shift to recognizing that success is not the summit. It's not the destination. It's about who I'm becoming on the journey and who we are becoming on the journey, and really staying focused on that and putting our energy towards who we want to become rather than the title or the salary or whatever else, you know, society determines the success. So that experience really changed my mindset and my perspective about a lot of things. But that's kind of one of the biggest lessons for me.
Yeah, I like that you say that, because I think I hear from a lot of people that I follow that are super successful. It's like, how do you know when you've made it? Well, you're not going to know. Someone's not going to show up with a trophy and be like, you made it. Here's your trophy.
Like, you don't get the medal at the end.
Right. Yeah. And if you're doing what you want to do, I mean, why would there be an end? You know, this isn't, if we're not going in that go to work, retire, and then die situation, you know, if you're living in alignment with your purpose, there should be no end game. You know, it is about the journey. Like, people don't want to hear that because it's so cliche now, but that's what it's about.
It is. It's about the journey and about who you're becoming on that journey. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
This has been so awesome. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you and how they can connect with you?
Yeah, I think the best place is I'm over on LinkedIn, and I can send you the link for that, but it's Marisa Ciesluk, Ciesluk. And yeah, that's the best way to find me and connect with me. And I would love to connect with any of your listeners, or just continue the conversation about being burned out or figuring out what's next for you in your career journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was such a great conversation. That felt so easy and flowed so nicely, which is really great, because after we ended the interview, we chatted for a little more. I usually chat for a little bit after the interview is done with my guests, and we just got into talking about how nice it is to have things just flow. Like, I do like structure. I think I thrive a little bit better when I have some structure, but there's got to be room within the structure to move and to flow and to just kind of let things happen as they happen, like a loose structure. So if you are someone who is experiencing burnout, you feel like you have a higher calling for your soul, don't ignore it. And please reach out to Marisa, connect with her. I will have the links for her in the show notes, and just start that conversation. Start learning how to tune back into who you are and what you want and what you're here to do. I invite you, as always, to hop into my Energy Within Facebook group. We do some group Reiki sessions in there. We do card pulls. We chat about different topics about energy and again, accessing, nurturing, and building your energy and your confidence. That's the whole goal. So please hop into there and let me know if you have questions about anything. If you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate if you shared it. Please post it to your social media, tag me, tag Marisa, let us know what resonated, what you liked, what you need to know more of. I'll also have the links below. If you are interested in trying a Reiki session with me, I'm still offering the virtual Reiki mini sessions. And also hop into the virtual fitness studio. If you have questions on any of those, please reach out to me, send me a DM, hop into the group, and let me know. Thank you as always for listening, and I'll see you next week.